Anita here just for a minute to give us a brief update on
The archives.
archives. Take it away.
Okay. The wherewithal y'all can go into. But anyway, when and if we do get books, and I will store as many as I can until such time as we get home for them. I had to go to Oxford this last week. And while I was there, I got there very early before my appointment, and I thought I'll waste my time going to the library genealogy room because I'm still doing genealogy on my stuff. And I met a man named Will St. Armand, very nice gentleman, who was working in their genealogy room. And we got to talking, and so I didn't get any genealogy research, so to speak. We talked almost the whole time, then I had to leave. But he was a very nice gentleman, and we discussed archives and history. Well, I won't go through the whole thing, but anyway. He said that since I'm with the Historical Society and a member, that he had in the genealogy room at Oxford a lot of duplicates. For instance, he gets the Journal of Mississippi History from the State Archive. Now, I don't know if you buy them or whatever, I haven't done any research on that, but he gets them. And this one is from August of 1991. And he said, I have a lot of duplicate material and we're running out of space. And so I need to get rid of everything I have 2 or more of. And I said, throw it our way. And then I can bring it to the meetings, and if y'all want to keep it, fine, and if you don't, we can pitch it. But at least you'll have a say, and that's material we do not have to purchase to put in a genealogy room, if and when we ever get one. So that's all I wanted to tell you, was that we have a source for some extra material. I left him my name and phone number and the museum's address. So and I told him, anything y'all want to get rid of, please let us have it, because we still have very little regular genealogy material because our little bitty room in the library only holds so much. And so we can store a little bit more of the genealogy records and stuff till we can get someplace to call home. So I just wanted to make y'all aware of that. If you want to look at the journals, this is how many, he just handed them to me, and he said, here, you can start with these, and I just walked out the door with them. So they were free, and I thought, wow, free material. That's awesome. So I just wanted to let y'all know that. And I have to go because I have to get ready for a meeting, okay? Another meeting.
Thank you very, very much. That is actually really, really great, because when we get a firm place that we're going to be able to store and showcase and allow people to come in and look through things, then I think that's going to be some great additions to our collection. We're going to go ahead and get started with today's speaker. It's Ms. Meredith Gray from the Marshall County Museum, and she's going to speak to us about
our museum.
About the museum. All right. I didn't know if there was anything more specific. So, all right. So, go ahead.
Well, you just took my thunder when I was going to say. I met Miss Gray when I went on a tour. Enjoyable trip. I met Miss Gray at that time, and she gave us a narrative and what have you. But before she gets started, I want to go ahead and tell you about our next month's speaker. I'm going to let Jerry Owens, who has heard him, tell about our next month's speaker. Jerry, you want to share?
Oh, I've got a lot of stuff written down. Hold on.
Well, I don't want all that. I just want you to talk about the next one. He has heard them and recommended them to me, and I contact them. And
I get paid for talking. It's hard just to shut it off sometimes. They're the King sisters, and they've written a book that it's a question. Y'all twins? And they are twins. And they have a particular connection to our North Mississippi community. They knew Mr. Faulkner when they were children. And they are a couple of clowns with a big put on too, and it's really worth the program. I would advise you move all this stuff over to give them some room when they get here. The King Sisters, Y'all Twins, is the name of their book. buy one or two of them when they come. And let's see, if they're gonna talk about, they'd like to visit a school. I don't know if they've arranged it or not yet. You're convinced they have?
I think so. I
Good.
think Melinda has made that happen.
Good, good. That's what I know. How's that?
But very entertaining, correct?
Entertaining, I mean, yes, sir, they tell corny jokes, and they do a little slapstick, and,
So bring somebody with you next month.
yes, please.
So Miss Gray and I just got back from Muddy Creek, so she's full of fish. So we're glad she's here, and give her a welcome, Miss Meredith. Also, I can add, she's a retired history teacher from Missouri, but they are now in the SEC, so.
Okay,
She's okay.
I had to decide which team to root for. My husband, who, before he died, he was a strong Ole Miss fan. So when Missouri Tigers got in, I kind of had to, like you said, I'm a retired history teacher and taught in a small rural school. We graduated about 80, 85 students every year. And I didn't go into teaching until I graduated from college when I was 40 years old. I'd always told my children I would complain about the educational system, that they weren't really appreciating history and all that kind of stuff. And my son said, "Mom, you know what you always told us?" I said, "No." He said, "If you want something changed, you have to be the change." So that's what I did. Went to school and became a teacher and found out that social studies was always treated like the ugly stepchild in the curriculum. And I really had a passion for my students and wanted them to understand that they were living in history at that time. And the people around them, and I would tell them, I said, you look around at the people that are sitting next to you, because you don't know which one of these people are going to be your next doctors, your lawyers, find the cure for cancer, go to this or that or whatever. And so I feel like my years spent in teaching kind of made an impact, I hope, on students. I have Facebook with many of my former students, and they're teachers now. And they'll write back and they'll say, at that time my name was Powers, and they'd say, "Miss Powers, I'm using that corny joke of yours about so-and-so and such and such." So anyway, and the way I got involved with the Marshall County Historical Museum was after my husband's death. I don't know if any of you know Mrs. Lois Swaney Ship. And she is a marvelous, marvelous, I cannot even describe her. She is just one unique person. She had a stroke a couple of years back, so she's no longer our director, but up until that time she was our director, and she was instrumental in getting the museum as it is. And she asked me to come and be a part of the staff, and I said, I don't think so. And so she said, "Just come and see us." So I went to visit her, and I saw it, and I was just fascinated by what Marshall County had to offer. I don't know if any of you have been to the museum. Have any of you been? Well, you know, when I talk about how fascinating it is, how fascinating it is. It's 3 stories, and we're located in the old Mississippi Synodical College for Women building. And in 1903 is when that was built, and it encompassed the whole block on College Street. And what's left, in 1970, they were going to tear the building down and put a parking lot there. And Miss Swaney and several other people in the community decided that we didn't need a parking lot. You could put a parking lot anywhere, but you will never get that building back. So it was through their efforts that the building was saved, and it is a historic. It's actually one of the artifacts that we show. The building is amazing. As I said, it's 3 stories. It has 22 rooms in it, and that was the dorm for where the girls stayed. And the old building is it's a wonder within itself. And Miss Swaney and the other people who decided that they needed a museum, have done a wonderful job in acquiring things. And if you know Miss Swaney Ship, when she asks you to do something, she doesn't really ask you, she tells you, and you don't ever say no to her. And so we are fortunate to have about 40,000 or more artifacts. We are bursting at the seams. And hopefully at some point in time we'll get additional space. And as I was touring yours, I thought, man, this is great. You can stand back. And I love the concept of the look boxes. And I'm going to steal some of your all's ideas and take back for ours. The museum, like what I said, it's just pretty unique in all the things that it has. Everything has been donated to the museum or is on loan to the museum. There's only 2 things that have been purchased for the museum, and that was an armadillo. And now you're probably saying, why do you need an armadillo in a museum? But we have a wildlife room, and she purchased that armadillo because the other stuffed animals were given to us by a taxidermist, and he said he couldn't give us an armadillo because it's against the law to stuff them because they potentially carry leprosy. And so when she found this armadillo in an antique shop, she purchased it for our museum. So I'm trying to think of all the things that we possibly have there that could hold your attention. You could spend, many people come in, they think they can go through it in 10 minutes, and they can't, unless they just do a very, very fast walkthrough. I do have some pamphlets that I brought about our museum, and you can see that we are chock full of things. We have from the Indians. Every room has a different little kind of theme about it. And it's interesting to see what people are interested in when they come through, and I'll start talking about something and somebody say, oh yeah, they did such and such and so and so. So I'm constantly learning from our guest. And one of our guests that we had last August came in. He was from China. A young man from China came in. He spoke broken English, and he wanted to see our museum. And I said, well, how did you get to our museum? And he said, well, I flew into New York and then flew into Memphis and had a business meeting, and I was driving to Birmingham and I saw the sign. So I was taking him around and I was showing him our Civil War room, and he said, what is the Civil War? And I thought, oh my gosh. So I said, well, it's kind of like when brothers fight, you know, against it. They have strong beliefs. He said, So then I would take him up to the vintage clothing and talk about the antebellum dresses, and he'd say, oh, so tiny. So you never know. And just this past week we had people from Australia. We've had people from Scotland. We've had people from Russia. We've had people from, one lady came in from the Ukraine last summer, and she saw our Nazi flag, and she was so upset that we had a Nazi flag. She thought we were supporting the Nazi movement, and so her family had to explain to her that no, this was just showing so that people could learn. And I had intended to tell you about how our museum got started, and first it was the historical group, and you all have a great, great membership. We very seldom see any of our historical members. And I don't know if that's the fault of whose fault that is, but at one point in time they were very, very active, and they were instrumental in getting the museum together and preserving all of these wonderful artifacts that we have. And if you haven't been there, I really would urge you to come and see. The purpose, I don't know if you all have a mission statement for your museum or not, but we have been given or have made a mission statement, and it says, "We are the keeper of the county's treasures. We are diligent in creating an interest in and a love for the past, the present, and the future of our country's incredible history. This is accomplished to serve as inspiration for future generations so they too will be cognizant of our history and help preserve our treasures. We preserve, promote, and uphold the museum's endeavors." And that's what we try to do, is to protect those artifacts that have been given to us, and to educate when we have school children coming in the past, we've just kind of let them turn loose and they just roam the museum and touch and everything. And since my background is as an educator, I've told Mr. Carter, I said, I think we need to find out what area they're studying and sit them down and give them a little history lesson about that particular time, and then take them to show them this place that we have, rather than to just overwhelm them with everything that we have. And my passion is to get children to understand that history isn't something that is in the past, although that is true, that it is in the past, but it is up to us to tell that story. And when they come into the museum, when people come into the museum, I tell them things are just things until you know the story behind them. And the story behind them is usually extremely fascinating. And Holly Springs has a wonderful, wonderful history. It's amazing at the history that is located in that area. And we just got finished with the pilgrimage. And people were stunned when they came into our museum, and we would tell them a little bit about why the houses were as they are, and why the settlers came here, and why Holly Springs and Marshall County, out of Robert E. Lee's 28 generals in the state of Mississippi, we had 11 of them from our area. Why that happened. And as I told them, I said, I'll tell you like I did my students in school. Everybody says there's a cause and effect. Well, there's always a push and a pull in history. And so you have to find out what the push was to get them to come here, or the pull to get them to come here. And once you begin to understand that, then everything begins to make sense to you, why it happens that way. And geography is extremely important. And I was telling Mark today, I said, I've been to Ripley one other time. And as I was driving in today, I thought, man, you have to want to come to Ripley to get to Ripley. I mean, truly. And but it's a fascinating place. And I was looking around and I thought, man, there is a lot of neat things here. And the people, it looks so clean. And when I would go by, people would smile. And I think, this must be a really friendly place. So, but back to Marshall County and Holly Springs, you know, we're just a short distance from the Tallahatchie River and a short distance from Tennessee. And so much of the Civil War occurred, or a lot of the interesting part of the Civil War occurred in Mississippi. Mississippi was the site of the next most battles in the Civil War, next to Virginia. And Virginia had the most, and Mississippi had the second most. And the skirmishes that were fought and the homes that are there, you know, we have a complete set that belong to Kay Clark of the histories of the North and the South, the rebellion of the North, which is interesting. They talk about the rebellion of the South, or the Southern states, and the Southern states talk about the Northern aggression. So it's interesting to see how it's termed, but we have a complete set of what the generals, major officers, wrote down about each of the skirmishes that they were involved in. And I asked Miss Lois, I said, do you ever let anybody go through these? And she said, oh no, we can't do that. And I thought, well, what good are they? And she said, well, they are digitalized, so you do have access to them at some place. And I said, well, do you know which one Holly Springs is mentioned in there? And she said, well, General Grant never mentions Holly Springs. And I said, really? And she said, no, he never mentions Holly Springs, because he was chased out of Holly. He himself was not chased out of Holly Springs, but he left Holly Springs in the charge of a Colonel Murphy. And of course, they were defeated by Van Dorn and destroyed all of this $7 million worth of equipment that was stockpiled in Holly Springs. And I said, well, there's our little slogan for our town, the town that Grant wants to forget. You know? And I mean, it's just amazing to me, all the history that is there. And talking with people who live there, we have very few visitors from Holly Springs to our museum. Most of them are from out of the county or out of the city or even out of the country. And we do have some school children that come through, but not many of them. And that's one of the things that, as an educator, I want the children to know more about their local history. And we have a marvelous cemetery that somebody just needs to take it by the reins and begin to get people interested in taking these children. They could walk to the cemetery, and there is a whole story in that cemetery. And like our museum, there's a whole story. There are so many different things. Took my 12-year-old granddaughter through it, and she was fascinated by it. She was looking at the undergarments that the women had worn and all the dresses, and she said, ooh, that would be so uncomfortable. And I said, it would. And then we were showing her the fans, and I said, well, Grace, you know that they had a language of the fan. And I said, nothing really, and I would always tell my high school students that there's nothing new that's ever been invented. It's just been modified or changed in some form or fashion. And I said, like you all have text messages that you can send so your parents don't know. I said, well, they use the fans to do that, to meet me out back or get away from me or whatever. But the fans meant it was all depending on how it was handled. And so she thought that was interesting that they communicated by fans. And then, of course, we have a beautiful quilt display that quilts have been an important part throughout history. And we had a man from Iowa that taught textiles in the junior college in Iowa 4 weeks ago. Came through, and he came back down, and he said that you realize you have 5 very rare pieces of material or quilts up there. And I said, no, I didn't realize that, but I said, I know that there are some old ones. He said, well, you never see a red, one of the quilts he was talking about, he said, you never see red in this, because red was such a difficult color to get at that particular time. And these others that have been woven on the plantation, he said those were extremely rare. And he told us to take a picture of the material and send it to him, and he would try to help us identify which one. So we're in the process of trying to get that done. You were talking about the archives here. Under our new director, Julius Carter, which, by the way, when I came in and I started to sign my name on your guest book, I said, does that say Julius Carter? And she said, well, I don't know. And I said, it says Julius Carter. Was he here yesterday? And she said, well, I don't know. There was just a bunch of people from the tourism. And I said, well, that was Julius's name. Nobody writes like that, Julius. So anyway, he is our interim director, and he has an architectural background. And he's very interested in the buildings that have been lost in Holly Springs, and he's very interested in preserving some of the buildings that are still standing. He's been instrumental in trying to get the funds and to get Chalmers Institute restored. But his direction for us is, the first thing he did when he came in, he said, we need an inventory of what we have here. I said, an inventory? Like in every piece? He said, yes. I said, okay. So the other ladies and I undertook to do 3 floors of over 40,000 artifacts inventory. It took us 8 weeks to do that, 3 of us. And so then we thought, whoo, that's good, we're finished with that. And he said, now we're going through the files. I said, okay. So we started pulling the files out, and we found that we have some very, very interesting old pieces. And so we're in the process of trying to preserve those in acid-free environment, trying to get that all correlated and everything. And I love what you've done with the look boxes in here. And I think that's gonna be something that, I'm sure Chili's is gonna beat me to it when I get there. I've got an idea, I've got one, so, to do with ours. But we opened up manila envelopes, and one of them was the Lee family collection, LEA family collection. And in those, as I was straightening them out, had put my white gloves on, straighten them all out, and get them wrapped in this acid-free paper. And one of the letters was from 1818. I thought, oh my gosh. And then there were several, like from 1838, and it was to this, a father to his son. The son had written to the father asking for money while he was away at LaGrange College. And that was in Alabama. I thought it was in Tennessee, but come to find out it's in Alabama. This one, particular one is. And he was asking for money. And the father wrote back and said, I think it's very strange that your need for money correlates to your poor grades. So I thought, that is so, nothing changes. But we've preserved those. There are 55 letters, and in some of these letters, it's a mother's letter to her son, who is a captain in the Civil War, in the Confederate Army. And they're talking back and forth about the deaths of some of his cousins, and it just breaks your heart when you read some of these. We also found a broadside that has the death of George Washington written on it, it's published on it. And we have found several letters from the 1800s that we're trying to preserve. And we have been given, for some reason, people give us diaries, their histories, their whatever that they feel like we need, or they don't know what to do with them. And so they give them to us. And Julius, I said, well, we need to make a research library. We need to have that available for people to come and when they're doing. And it was so interesting because just as we had stated about the desire to start this research library, then we started getting calls from the university at Indianapolis and one from Wisconsin wanting to know about a couple of the things that we had just found. And so I'm excited about that part. And so we in our mission statement, we talk about preserving, so that's kind of what we're doing, is preserving that, but we're also educating, and in the process we try to promote Holly Springs and anything else that is connected with our museum. Like I said, the local people don't, I guess maybe they've seen it when they were children, and we've failed in our part in educating and having the rotating exhibits. And I noticed that you all had the display of the salt and pepper shakers, and I think that's wonderful that you have people who are willing to share those kinds of things. So I'm going to steal that one too, about going back and just, we keep thinking we need this big space to do it, but that's not a big space. So maybe we can start smaller and be able to get those kinds of things. I don't know, you know, what the future's really got for the museum, other than I know that it takes interested people just like you all. You have to have a love for history and an interest in preserving your history and promoting your history, and that's what we try to do at the Marshall County Museum. And hopefully, if you haven't been there, you will come to visit us. And I brought some handouts on the museum, and this is the just the driving tour in Holly Springs. Has a map on it, And it also has all of the antebellum homes that are, you can't tour them, but you can go and walk around them and see what they look like. And I would like to do an architectural tour sometime, because I think it's interesting to see the different things that make up the homes. And I brought a couple of books. We have all kinds of books in the museum for sale, but a lot of people, local people, have written books, and this is Marshall County, and I don't know if you've ever heard of Chesley Thorne Smith, but she has an attic full of pictures from the late 1800s and 1900s, and she has since died, but her books are extremely interesting, just about the local history. And then It Happened Here in Holly Springs tells the history of it, and this one was a doctoral thesis, started out to be, and turned it into a book, and it talks about what has happened in Holly Springs. But we've got local authors. You were talking about the King twins, and when you were speaking about it, it didn't cross my mind that that's who you were talking about, but we've had a little flyer sent out about them, and we're gonna get them too. So, if you've got questions about the museum, I'd be happy to answer them, or questions about anything.
I'm really architecture wise too. It's like turning the clock back. It's the railroad station you have there,
That depot?
which is falling in disarray, and I hate to see that, because that's such a beautiful old railroad station, and that's full of history right there. You know, that's.
And people have worked with Mrs. Wyatt about that, trying to get her to get grants to, and it just doesn't, it's a private owned,
I know.
and it's,
You put a hamburger stand across the road.
you can't go in and just say, you will do this, and you will, but, and it would take a lot of money to restore that, but I'm like you, it breaks my heart to go and know that that part of the second floor has fallen in, and,
What's the name of the hamburger place?
Phillips Grocery, used to be a saloon.
And you might want to add that the museum has 3 floors, but it also has an elevator.
Oh, yes, we do have an elevator.
Which will take you to all 3.
Mrs. Lois had, she's about yay big, and she suffered a stroke a couple years ago, so she's no longer at the museum, but she calls and keeps us on our toes still. And, but she had written a grant and gotten the grant from the state of Mississippi to get that elevator, and she said, we do not want a 2-passenger one, we want a big one. So we have a big elevator, it's a freight elevator, and she said, well, now that we have the elevator, we don't have any place to put it. So she knew that Warren Buffett owned the brick factory in Holly Springs. So she wrote Warren Buffett and said, we need the material to build a 3-story shaft for our elevator. And he donated the bricks and the materials for that. And I laughed at her and I said, so we can tell people Warren Buffett gave us the shaft? And she said, yes, you can. So, we've been fortunate in the things that people have given to us and have been willing to help us. And I think it's very interesting that you all operate on donation only. We charge $5. And it breaks my heart. Well, in fact, since Chili's isn't here, I'll tell it. But there were a couple of children that came in and they didn't have any money. And I said, that's okay, I know somebody that does. So we took them through, and I can't turn anybody away from seeing
You
these.
wrote Warren Buffett again?
I should set up scholarships, shouldn't I?
Did you do your teaching before you came to Marshall County?
I did. I taught, I didn't go into teaching till I was 40. And I taught for 20 years, and I knew when I was telling my students to go get typing paper, and they would look at me like, you mean computer paper? I knew it was time for me to get out.
Do you know the superintendent in Holly Springs? school superintendent.
Jerry Moore?
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
He's my wife's cousin,
Really?
and I'm working on his family history for him.
Are you?
Yes, really am.
Well, he is such a unique young man. I mean, I don't know him personally other than hi bye, I talked to him.
Well, his cousins own the hardware store there on the square.
Booker's,
Booker's, yes, Booker's.
that's a museum within itself.
It's more relevant.
So, yeah, I taught for 20 years and I weighed the odds. I have 4 children. I have 3 daughters that live in the 2 in Cordova and 1 in Barton, and 8 grandchildren down there. I have a son who lives in North Carolina and 2 grandchildren, so I'll put 8 and 2. 8 and 2. So that's how I got to, down to.
We lived on Casey Road. You know where Casey Road
I
is?
do.
We were the first farm north of the Coldwater River on the west side,
Oh, really?
and we were there 27 years before we moved. We
So you know where
retired.
Hedge Farm is? That's-
Yeah.
That was one of the homes that was on tour, and that's one of my favorite homes. You don't think of it as being antebellum, but it's nice, very nice. But I can just urge you to come and stop at the museum, and I'll be happy to tell you anything you want to know, so, that I know. So, no other questions, no?
When you preserve your paper material, your documents, what are you doing?
Well, right now, we're putting them in acid-free boxes, and we're going to start a room for archives that people who are doing research could come and see them. But now that I've seen your look box, I'm thinking, man, we've got a whole other set of jobs to do. For people to see them. They don't have to see the original, although, you know, if they wanted to, I guess that we could make arrangements to do that, but they could, to read them and have some of the papers, the writing is so beautiful that I can't even read it. It's that, what is it, the Spencerian script or something like that is just absolutely art within itself. And of course, the museum has so many of Kate Clark, who is a renowned artist from Holly Springs. We have so many of her things in the museum. We have all of her costume jewelry and her antebellum clothes, the Paris fashions that she had. I mean, I could just tell you all kinds of things about what we have in that museum. We have hair art. When I first saw it, I thought, ooh, it's Rita Clarice. But it's really unique, and it was a way that the Victorian honored their dead. And one of them I didn't realize. One of them is in the shape of a cross, and made out of hair. And then there's one that's made into a half, well, almost a 3/4 circle. And the bottom part is left open because it signifies that that person is gone and part of their circle is missing. And I mean, it's just, there's just so much history in everything. Little things that, like I was telling you about the students that I told them you better be nice to them because you don't know. Well, one of our rooms, we have Lieutenant George Anderson, who is from Holly Springs, who was the pilot to Admiral Byrd to the South Pole. And I can almost guarantee you that the kids growing up with him didn't know he was going to do that. And he didn't know that. And then Shepard Smith from Fox News is from Holly Springs. Miss Lois did write him and ask him for $1 million.
Did she get it?
No. Well, thank you for inviting me, and I'm going to be back. I want to see and learn more about your museum. And I appreciate you all having me to come and speak to you. And this is a great group. Kind of makes me want to get back and get somebody started on art. I'm going to leave these folders and things
Well,
here.
did you know that this organization started out as the organization, and then part of it, the museum, when the museum was started, this organization started, and then later on they separated.
Well, that's kind of what happened in ours. I guess maybe it was a movement or a state mandate or whatever to keep the tax-free or something, I'm not sure. But the historical group started the movement to preserve the things in Holly Springs. They were around for like 20 years before 1970 when they petitioned the county to have the building as a museum. And Miss Lois was always concerned that if somebody didn't tell the story about their town, about the people, who would? And it takes, well, I've been told it takes one generation for you to be forgotten.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's kind of sad. And I got to thinking about that. My grandchildren didn't know my dad. They know him because of the stories I tell them, but they didn't know him. So it does take one generation to be forgotten.
That's like Harry Midley. Most people don't know where that expression came from.
I don't either, but I've heard it all.
It was a cotton grading
Very
staple
good.
length. Fair to middling and strict middling were two different lengths of cotton staple used in the Memphis cotton market and other places too, I'm sure.
Well,
Like when
neat.
they were, and nobody knows it.
Well, it's like my students at school would always, they would remember every other thing I would tell them about except what I really was teaching them. And I was telling them about the Ring Around the Rosie poem. And telling them that was from the play when it was going around. Ring Around the Rosie was, you'd always have a red spot in that ring. And Ashes, Ashes was the bodies were burnt. We all fall down, and the posies to keep the stink away. And they, that's gross, Miss Powers.
I'm a retired school teacher also.
Oh, are you? Well,
Yeah.
great. So, we also have these books that Miss Lois wrote. She wrote 4 books about Marshall County. And these are for sale in our library, and they're fascinating. She has pictures and stories about all of the buildings, the people, everything, and she even has recipes in the back. So, I would encourage you to come and visit us sometime.
Okay, take that $5 thing off of it. Do it for the locals, okay?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing with us. That was a wonderful, wonderful talk. And I really hope that maybe we'll all get a chance to get over there at some point and see the museum. I know that would be really interesting. We're gonna take just a few minutes and, go over a little bit of business. We're going to have the minutes from the March meeting read. We do need to vote to approve the minutes. So if you find any mistakes or anything in it, do hold your hand up and let us know then, okay?
I emailed these out to everyone also. I may not have everyone's email address, and they're also on the Facebook page for you to look at. President Nunley called the meeting to order at 12 noon at the Tippah County Development Foundation office. Members present were Patricia Glover, Jessica Rollison-Jeter, Ken Lentz, Marsha Criswell, Lamar Criswell, Imogene Harden, Freddie Barker, Deborah Hurt, Milton Welch, Catfish Lowry, Edsel Jameson, Evelyn Jameson, Tommy Covington, Al Stroop, Randy Graves, Mark Evans, Ed Beavers, and Felicia Caples. President Nunley introduced representatives from the Mississippi Department of Archives and History who presented the March program. The Mississippi Department of Archives and History awarded $115,000 toward the renovation of the old jail into an archives and research center. The mission of the Archives project is to preserve county records as well as gather personal records of any person who ever lived in Tippah County. The Archives Annex will contain the paper trail of a family's ancestors, Bibles, photos, written family histories, cemetery records, circuit and chancery court records, and any other municipal or family records that would provide a continuation of family and county heritage for generations to come. Tim Barnard, Director of Local Government Records, Preston Everett, Reformatting Supervisor, and David Pilcher, Section Head of Electronic Archives, discussed various aspects of archiving documents, including scanning, storage, and access. They also discussed the documents available online and by request through their Department of Archives and History. Old business, Marnell Childers proposed that the society decide on a method of showing our appreciation for speakers. New business, Anita Decker discussed the Arts Festival that will be held in June at the Tippah County Historical Museum and asked for volunteers from the society to assist. The next meeting will be Tuesday, April 15th at the museum. The speaker will be Ms. Meredith Gray, who will discuss the Marshall County Museum, and the meeting was adjourned.
All right, and we need a motion and a second to approve. We have a motion, Mr.
I
Covington.
make a motion.
Second? Second, Ms. Mavis. All in favor, accept minutes as read? Any opposed? Thank you very, very much. Do we have a financial report?
Yes, I do.
Wonderful.
This is, as of today, our checking account is $7,709.94. We have a CD, which is $5,000, and the interest of that goes into the checking account, not back into the CD. And I want to particularly mention this. We have a bicentennial fund for the county's bicentennial in 2036. It started out with $100, which was left over from the 150th birthday. We actually started a trust fund in the bank, and they decided they would not manage it, so they just turned it back over to the Historical Society. But as of today, we have $2,062 in the bicentennial fund.
It started with $100 in what year?
1986. Now, we added some to it. You know, I think $1,000 was just added from the Historical Society, but the rest of it is interest. And I'll give you this printed for your minutes.
Thank
So
you
that's the financial.
very, very much. And one last piece of business today, if no one
I've got
has,
an announcement.
okay, you wanna go ahead with yours?
Yes. On April the 28th at 5:30 p.m., the Tippah Tigers Heritage Day celebration will be held at the east side of the courthouse. And I just wanted to tell everybody that I'm gonna be one of the speakers at this meeting, so everybody's invited to come to it. And it's at April the 28th at 5:30 p.m. And anyone that wants to go to Chicken Supreme Restaurant and eat afterwards is welcome. So, just let y'all know I'm doing part of it.
Well, let's all come out and support Miss Mavis. That's April 28th. What day of the week's that on?
I think that's on Monday.
On a Monday evening at 5:30, right? At the court, east side of the courthouse. I hope everybody picked up, one of these little sheets. Your officers have been working really, really hard on getting us some direction this year. We've got a goal statement for 2014 and 2015, and let's make sure everybody's got one. We've been using our noggins pretty good and coming up with some ideas about where we kind of think the club needs to go. Just some general directions, and I just want to go over really quickly and see what you guys think of all of this. One thing that we found out as we were doing the research on kind of where we were as a club is that we do not actually have a nonprofit status at the moment. We're not 501c3 with the government. So I think our first objective should be to regain that 501c3 so that we can apply for grant funding and we can get everything in order so that we can start getting some money rolling in here so we can do some projects. Under objectives, that was the first point. The second, research and obtain grant funding. The third was to create some standing committees, which were going to be like some department heads over the various projects that we have mentioned in the meetings. An archive project committee, a cemetery survey committee, a committee for fundraising, and a social committee to help put together some publicity and some events for us. We would like to reinstate the newsletter concept, whether it's a printed newsletter, perhaps it could go out in email to some people who wanted it, or be posted in other social media forums, getting a newsletter going again. Number 5, creating partnerships with Main Street, the museum, Blue Mountain College, VOTEC, and other institutions, so that we can have a presence at some of the events. And I want to take a minute to mention that one of those events is coming up. The First Monday Music Festival is coming up May 3rd. That's on Saturday. And we have been invited to set up a booth, maybe get the little public presence going about who we are and what we're going to be doing here in the county. So that's going to be a good opportunity for us to kind of get our feet wet and get started with a little publicity. Number 6, student membership rate to encourage young people to come join the Historical Society, because if we don't get younger people here and get our kids and our grandkids interested in this, there may come a time, just like you said, it only takes one generation to forget, and there's so much here it's worth remembering. And maybe if we can get some students to join, that will really help us down the road in our continuation of the work. Number 7, establishing, and I think this is maybe a little bit down the road, establishing a scholarship fund to give scholarships for Tippah County students, perhaps who would like to go into history or some similar thing that would correlate with what our mission and vision is. We would like to really achieve a 50% increase in memberships by next year, and we have how many members now, approximately?
Total membership,
Total membership,
31.
31, so that would be an additional 15 members.
Yes.
So I think, if we got out and beat the bushes, we could get 15 members by next year. And that would only help us grow and get a bigger pool of people's interest and their talents, and would benefit the organization. And the last one, number 9, obtain some necessary meeting space to accommodate future growth of memberships. Today it's really not too terrible, but when we have a really big one, kind of like last month when everybody was here, it's kind of tight in here. So we're going to be in the process of kind of looking for somewhere with maybe a little bit more space so we can be a little more comfortable, and perhaps even have maybe some semi-permanent office space to do some work out of. So those are just some ideas that we had. Are there any comments or questions related to objectives 1 through 9?
And you're gonna lead us in all these efforts.
By George, I will try. I'm gonna tell you something. I gotta give credit where credit's due, because organization skills and coming up with these ideas, and I gotta give credit to these 2 ladies. They've been brainstorming. So I think what we need to do today, I think we need to vote to adopt this sheet, including the mission statement, the goals, and the objectives as a club, and therefore that would give us permission to start acting on some of these issues. So we'll need a motion and a second to adopt this page.
That's so moved.
Motion, second, Mr. Covington. All in favor? Any opposed by like sign? Carries. All right, well, your officers are gonna hit the ground running with this. We're gonna get to work, maybe not as soon as we head out the door, but it'll be shortly thereafter. So, if you hear about us out in town harassing people for money or memberships or meeting spaces, then you know it's us. All right, that's all that I have today. Does anyone else have any old business that needs to be brought before the club? Mr. Owen?
I like your sign.
What sign?
Oh, you should drive by and see it. It's down there right across from the
Oh, one
the
with
National
your
Guard
picture on it.
Armory. And
Oh, her picture,
Yeah.
your picture. That was not my fault. And
The billboard.
yeah, I thank you for letting me
Talking about that
sign.
Dr. Chris told you to do that, didn't he?
See me outside after this is
Hey, Christina, we,
Yes, sir.
we passed by her the other day, and I don't know, me and her one made the statement, look at that young girl, that's her great grandma, over there with her. Go tell her that, go tell her I said that.
I don't wanna get hurt today. I gotta live with her the rest of the day. Oh, go ahead.
Do we want to go ahead and see about maybe having a different place for next month with the King sisters coming and?
We'll probably need a little more room
Yeah, they
next
need
month,
room.
don't you think?
They need room.
They need room.
Would the meeting room at the library be a good option for that? I don't think
That's
they
where we,
would
you
mind
know,
if we
we
were
had them when
allowed,
they
or-
come with their books.
Well, that'd be familiar
Uh-huh.
with the territory.
What about the meeting room that we had last month at the development?
We're in talks right now with TCDF, and I wasn't really gonna mention a whole lot in depth into it, but I think we've had maybe some misunderstanding and miscommunications between our two organizations, so I'm trying to get all of that ironed out, in the next couple of weeks, so we might wanna give them a little breathing room this month. But,
Can we
hopefully
bring
we're gonna be able to
refreshments?
do that.
Can we bring
We can bring
refreshments in the
refreshments to the
library?
library, can we not?
Oh, yes, in the meeting room, yes,
Okay.
Yes, yes, we could do that, bring our coffee and our cookies, and we'd all be good, right? Alright, well, do we wanna proceed with that? Common assent, would that be okay with everybody? If we meet in the library meeting room next month for the, King Sisters twins, excuse me? Alright, well,
Are you gonna
that's
be the
where it'll
one
be.
to tell?
I'll be happy to, that's fine. I'll be. So we'll meet there next month, that will be May, see when the
20th.
20th, thank you. That'll be May 20th at the library's meeting room.
And we probably need to talk to Sheila, make sure.
I'll take care of that, I gotta go see her.
You got it? All right, do we have any other announcements or business that needs to be conducted before we adjourn today?
I want to say that we have started on the Indian Cemetery.
Yes, ma'am, can you give us an update on that? I almost forgot.
We got started last week and, we got it sectioned off. We're gonna have 5 sections of it. And we worked in section 1 and got the most of it done. With the GPS and everything, so.
Are we having any difficulty reading the names, or is everything in pretty good shape?
Most of them are, we did find a buried tombstone that we're gonna have to have dug up.
Oh, wow.
So,
Mhm, Miss Mavis had me pulling the grass.
but, so far everything has worked out pretty well, so.
On that note, and we may need to talk about it a little bit more with whoever's over, the committee that's over the cemetery, but, I follow a group in South Mississippi that has, an old plantation home they're restored, and they have some, old monuments that they were cleaning. And, they recommended a biological to get a lot of the growth and all the stuff off of it, and I saw some of the pictures. It doesn't harm the material or anything, and I didn't know if there are some out there that are in very bad shape,
There's a couple
they
that I
might be-
know of that we've run across so far.
might be willing for us to just use a biological cleaner on them, so we can try to clean them up so we can see them better, so.
I got 2 bottles of that as a sample, and, with permission, out at Walnut Creek, Tommy and I cleaned a couple stones.
How'd it do? Did it
It
do
don't
for
do
you?
like Clorox, but I think it does less damage to the stone in the long run.
I was gonna say, I think you're not supposed to use bleach, isn't that
I'm
right?
not putting it on anybody's stone, it's not mine, I mean,
Oh,
that's
I would, no, I understand,
But
I'm
now
just saying, I think the
this,
bleach
this,
does
this stuff
damage it.
is, I mean, you don't have to wear gloves or mask or anything, and, lots of water helps, and a
Mhm.
soft scrubber of some kind.
Well, that might be something to look into down the road if we wanna do any kind of cemetery
Well, the two
restoration
that I-
projects.
That I know that are real bad, and it was in section 1 that we just had, is my great grandparents, so,
Which ones, I'm interested.
the Weatherlys,
Weatherly's, okay.
it's not yours.
It's not mine, okay. We got something in common. All righty. Well, it is,
To
yes.
go a little backwards.
Go ahead.
If anybody doesn't know, this is Libby Bryant,
Sorry.
Main Street Director. Just kind of mentioned if we could possibly see about having our next meeting at the theater.
You could have them in the theater, and that would
I think
be
that would be
really
great.
great. Just, I mean, they've been to
That would
the
be great.
library, I mean,
Yeah.
what was it, a month ago, month and a half ago?
Mhm.
But that would give you an opportunity to have a really big, great crowd.
It's true.
So, and I know they wouldn't,
Joyce Grady's who
Joyce
needs
would
to
not
be
care
talked to
at
about
all,
that.
I'm sure.
I don't think so either, but
Let me-
that's who would take care
Let
of
me
that.
send them, I'll,
Well, it's just a space that can be used for meetings.
Stage.
they could be up on the stage, then you've got that reception area out front.
Yeah, they can.